Hey church, it's Stuart here. For those of you that don't know me, my wife and I, Carla, we pastor the Portsmouth congregation of Family Church, and today I'd just like to share a few thoughts with you. And this is entitled Pulling in the Same Direction, because we want to be a church that is pulling in the same direction. I'll expand on that in just a moment, but as a bit of background, I used to be in the Scouts. That probably doesn't surprise a lot of you. I have spoken about it before. I absolutely loved the years as a teenager that I was in the Sea Scouts. And one of the things that we used to do every year was have a May Day fete or a fair, and the big part of that was a tug of war competition. And I used to love being in our tug of war team, mostly because we won the competition basically every year. There was a bit of good competition there, but our troop was by far the best, because we organised the competition for a start. We had lots of opportunity to practice because we had the ropes, but also we knew how to work together as a team. And I loved being part of the A team that we had, and year after year we would win the competition. This is probably from the age of 13 to 16 years old, and one of the reasons we would win the competition every year was because we knew how to pull in the same direction. Now I'm going to refer to Nehemiah chapter 4 and just share a little bit from there as I talk about pulling in the same direction. So in Nehemiah chapter 4, the context is this, that 2,460 years ago, just a short time, Nehemiah, this is 443 BC, Nehemiah rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem, having taken a whole load of the Jewish people to Jerusalem to get involved with this task. There was a lot of opposition, but miraculously, come verse 6 of Nehemiah chapter 4, they had rebuilt half of the walls already. Nehemiah's people were courageous. The Jewish people that were involved were utterly bold, they were strong, and they were totally committed to this project. They were passionate about what they were doing. So verse 6 says this of Nehemiah 4. At last the wall was completed to half its height around the entire city, for the people worked with enthusiasm. And then skipping on to verse 12, I'm just going to read a few verses from this chapter. The Jews who lived near the enemy came and told us again and again, they will come from all directions and attack us. So this was their experience. The opposition was strong, and the experience of the Jews that lived in that area was that they were constantly under attack. So verse 13, I placed armed guards between the lowest parts of the wall and the exposed areas. I stationed the people to stand guard by families, armed with swords, spears, and bows. Then as I looked over the situation, I called together the nobles and the rest of the people and said to them, do not be afraid of the enemy. Remember the Lord, who is great and glorious, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. I'll just stop there. The very first point here is that Nehemiah had a great team. He had a strong team. And when it comes to being a church that is going to shine in the darkness of this world, especially at this time, and especially as we come out of this season and explore what the Lord is calling us to do next, I believe it's really important that we are a strong team. Now, not everyone who is a part of our church family is a part of the strong team straight away. It takes a while for people to engage with the life of the church, to discover what their gifts are, what their skills are. But I believe everyone is called to be a part of the team, and everyone is called to be a strong part of the team and create a strong team. And that's about discovering what your gifts are, what your skills are. It's about using what you've got in the right place on the team. So first of all, it's really important to have a strong team. But actually what we discovered when I was in the Scouts and we used to do tug of war is that it's not just about having strength. It's about using that strength well, placing it in the right place, and using the skills and working as a team together. So that's the first point. We've got to be a strong team. Second point is this. We'll become a strong team when we're positioned correctly. Now, Nehemiah, as we just saw in verses 12, 13, 14, he made sure that people were positioned correctly when it came to the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem. And that was really, really important. When it comes to the tug of war, what you don't do, you don't put the puny 11-year-old Boy Scout as the anchor man. You put the big, strong 16-year-old who you don't mess with as the anchor man. And then you kind of work your way forwards from largest to smallest. I was always somewhere in the middle. I wasn't the biggest lad, as you can probably realise, but I wasn't the smallest either. But what I was passionate about what we were doing. We as a team, we just loved the contest. We loved wiping out the opposition. And so we made sure that we were positioned right. We didn't argue about where we were positioned. We understood that it took each one of us to be in the right place. And as a church, if we're going to do the things that we've been called to do, if we're going to be that light that shines in the darkness, then we really need to make sure that we're positioned right. Now, you know better than anyone what your gifts, what your skills are. And if you don't, then you need to ask God. You need to ask him to show you what he's given you, the skills that he's given you. Perhaps the experience that you have in life is going to position you in exactly the right place in the things that God's called us to do as a church. So we've got to be positioned correctly. It's not for me to tell you what you can do. It's for you to discover what you can do, what God's called you to do, and then make sure you get yourself in the right position. Now, as a church leader, I want to help you with that. I want, in our Portsmouth congregation, I want people to be positioned right. But actually, when it comes to knowing what skills we have and gifts we have, that's up to you. So that's the second thing. We've got to be a strong team. We've got to be positioned right. And the third thing is this, and this is the title of what I'm speaking about. We've got to be pulling in the same direction. Pulling in the same direction. When we did the tug of war, we would all be pulling exactly in the same direction in order to put in order to have the most effect against the opposition, to be the strongest team that we could possibly be. If you're not pulling in the same direction, you're not going to be strong. If one is pulling that way and another one's pulling that way, then it's just not going to give the best strength that you have. And it's one of the most frustrating things, is that when there's people on your team who seem to be pulling in a different direction to you, it's frustrating for them. In their mind, they want to be going this way, but everyone else wants to be going this way. It's frustrating for the rest of the team, because we know where we're meant to be going, and if there's people that are pulling in the wrong way, well, really, either they need to start pulling with the team or join another team, because actually, when you find your place on a team that's pulling the way that you're pulling, then great, you can really become effective. I just want to encourage Family Church that you are incredible at pulling in the same direction. As a church, we've achieved so much, but there is so much more that God is calling us to do, and we will achieve those things when we all pull in the same direction. Nehemiah's people, they were passionate about what they were doing because they understood the cause of what they were doing. And actually, I think that's probably the thing that will help us pull in the same direction the most, is when we're in line with the vision, in line with the cause of what we've been called to do. And ultimately, the cause of what we've been called to do is to shine the light of God's kingdom in the darkness of the kingdoms of this world, to preach the good news of Jesus, and to teach people about the kingdom of God. Nehemiah stationed the people in certain places and said, don't be afraid of the enemy, remember the Lord. And when you're pulling in the same direction, the enemy loses power. The enemy doesn't have the kind of force that he would otherwise have. That's why he wants to pick people off and single people out. And what we've got to make sure we do is pull in the same direction so that there's no one who is singled out or picked off by the enemy. So I read already in verse 14 that Nehemiah said, "Don't be afraid of the enemy. Remember the Lord who is great and glorious, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes." And the Nehemiah's people, the Jewish people, they understood the cause of what they were doing. They were not afraid of the enemy. They remembered the Lord, and that's really important that we understand that there is no place for fear. Jesus promised that we will fear no evil because he's with us, and that indeed is the case for us as God's people. Our thing, what we need to do is remember the Lord, pull in the same direction, be a strong team together. And one thing that will cause us to do that is the cause of what we're doing, understanding the vision behind what we're doing. Now, Nehemiah, just reading further on, says in verse 17, "The leaders stationed themselves behind the people of Judah who were building the wall. The labourers carried on their work with one hand supporting their load and the other hand holding a weapon. All the builders had a sword bolted to their side. The trumpeter stayed with me to sound the alarm. Then I explained to the nobles and the officials and all the people, the work is very spread out. We're widely separated from each other along the wall. When you hear the blast of the trumpet, rush to wherever it is sounding, then our God will fight for us." And what Nehemiah was saying here was listen. Listen for the sound of what we're doing. When we did tug of war, we had a coach, a team coach, who would stand there alongside us and shout, "Pull, pull, pull." And the best thing that we could do was get in the rhythm of what he was shouting. As we pulled together on his signal, pull, 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 we would build up a momentum that the opposition, the enemy, couldn't stand against. And it's really important that we line up with the rhythm of what God is doing, the rhythm of the church. Every congregation has a different rhythm, a different style, a different way of doing things. And Family Church very definitely has a rhythm, a style, a way of doing things. And it's important that those who are on the team aren't just pulling in the same direction, understanding the vision and the cause of what we're doing and going that way, but also are in the rhythm of what we're doing. And I heard it said yesterday, actually, this was on my mind, and yesterday someone said it's really important that we protect the rhythm. Well, that someone was Pastor Andy, actually, and it just kind of really underlined to me that I should share this with you today. We want to be a church that is in rhythm together, that we line up with the rhythm of what the Lord is doing. So Nehemiah's people had to listen out for the sound of that trumpet so that they could get in the rhythm of what needed to happen. And then, of course, this blast of the trumpet that they had to listen out for, it was kind of like the voice of the coach. And the fifth point is this, that we need to be listening to the coach. And you might think I'm going to give you a big, a big encouragement to listen to the voice of your pastor. But that's not the voice that I'm talking about, actually. I'm talking about the voice of the Holy Spirit. My job isn't to tell you what to do. My job is to hear God. And so is your job. Because actually we are in relationship with the same God. And if I'm hearing God say something to me, and then you're going to hear God say the same thing to you. God's not confused. He's not telling us, if we're on the same team, he's not going to tell us to go in different directions or to pull at a different pace. He's going to be saying the same thing to every one of us. So perhaps my job as pastor is to help facilitate that, is to get us working together. But actually, it's my responsibility and your responsibility to be listening for the voice of the coach. And when we do, we will pull in the same direction. We will pull in the same rhythm as one another, and we will wipe the enemy out. One of the things that I used to love about the victories that we would have as a tug of war team was that we would normally end up on the floor in a big happy pile of mess, because actually that was what would happen. We'd pull the opposition over the line, and the momentum was such that we would just kind of end up running backwards and all fall over. But it was a victory. And sometimes victories are messy. Sometimes they're very neat and tidy. But however we get to that place, it's a victory ultimately. And then we move on to the next battle. So I just want to encourage you today, let's be pulling in the same direction. We learnt from Nehemiah chapter 4 and from my tug of war analogy, number one, that we've got to be a strong team. We've got to be utterly committed to what we're doing. Number two, we've got to be in the right place, positioned correctly. Number three, we've got to be pulling in the same direction. And if you feel like you're not pulling in the same direction, well, have a think about the cause of what we're doing. Have a think about the vision. Can you line up with the vision of what we're doing? If you can, amazing, wonderful. Find your place in this team and let's pull together. Number four, we've got to line up with the rhythm of the voice of the coach. Let's work together. Let's not work against each other. Let's all line up with the rhythm of what God's doing in this season. And number five, let's tune in to the voice of the coach. I hope this has encouraged you. I hope it's blessed you. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And I'm looking forward to seeing everyone again. And when we move out of this season, being able to really put this into practice even more than we can at the moment. I'd also like you to know, if you're struggling at this time, if you have family members who are sick or even have passed away, then we're praying for you. We love you, and we want you to see a breakthrough in God. We want you to know the comfort of the Holy Spirit in your life at this time. Church, let's look out for one another and let's pull together into the things that God's called us to do. God bless you.